Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Wu, CEO and founder of CauseVox. Today, in my CauseVox user interview series, I have someone super special from an organization that has been working with CauseVox since forever. Forever being, how many years is this? 6 years. So 6 years seems like a lifetime. So today we have Aishwariya Chandrasekar, and I'm super excited because she just finished up an annual campaign or fundraising campaign on CauseVox that raised nearly $100,000. And we're super excited because I've actually visited VisArts a few years ago, and I was super impressed by the programs, by the people over there. So today we're going to dive a little deeper into how VisArts is doing fundraising, how they've been successful, and just sharing a few fundraising tips. Aishwariya, could you introduce yourself and VisArts?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Aishwariya Chandrasekar. I am the development manager at VisArts. VisArts is a 501c3 nonprofit located in Rockville, Maryland. And it was founded in 1987 as a grassroots organization to serve local artists. VisArts' mission is to transform individuals and communities through the visual arts. And so we offer a number of opportunities for individuals of all ages and all abilities to get involved with the visual arts. VisArts offers classes, gallery space, exhibitions that are free for the public, artist residencies, camps, event rentals, and community programs, and more. I work with the development director and the executive director to raise funds for the organization through multiple streams, including individual contributions, grants, and corporate partnerships. We also work closely with the board, especially our development committee, as a function of our development and fundraising work. We work to create and establish development systems that kind of keep our work going throughout the year. And so CauseVox is super helpful for that. And then I also lead the annual campaign, again, using CauseVox.
Awesome. So it sounds like you all do a ton of different types of fundraising, also have a ton of different type of programs. So I just want to share with the audience real fast your website, because I think that this gives folks like a breadth of in terms of what VisArts is doing. There's education in terms of classes, and I'm on your marketing list, so I get a ton of emails in terms of classes. Unfortunately, I can't take them because I'm not based in Rockville. But then you all have camps, you have event rentals, and then obviously since you're a nonprofit, then there's a way for individual donors as well as corporate donors and everyone in between to contribute to what VisArts is doing. So Aishwariya, I'm very curious, since I did take a look in terms of your experience, how did you fall into the development function, or how did you get into what you're doing today?
Well, so I have a background in business psychology and anthropology. So in college, I did business management along with psychology and neuroscience. And then I had some experience working in the corporate world as a project manager in corporate healthcare. And then went over to social anthropology, and a strong uniting theme through all of my experience has been working with business, but also focusing a lot on nonprofits and social enterprises. So essentially how business can be used for creating social change and for working in communities. And I also have a background in visual arts. I grew up surrounded by the arts. My mom is a professional artist, and I also create art. So I think that all of these experiences kind of came together to build communication skills, to build strong business skills, but also while retaining the passion for the arts that I think is super important to be able to do development work and fundraising for an organization like VisArts.
Yeah, it sounds like you blended two big things, which is one, like your passions and your interests, and then the other part being like your skills and experience. And then those two things blend together. If you get a visual, like I visualize the Venn diagram since I used to be a manager.
Me too. Yeah.
You have just assure your purpose right there. So it sounds like kind of the perfect fit. Now, I'm curious in terms of fundraising though. So it seems like you're not a certified fundraising executive, but you're more of, you come from the kind of this businessy background. So in business, you can do like a lot of different things. You could do marketing, you could do fundraising, you could do project management, just kind of whatever it is. So why fundraising for you in terms of what you're focusing on?
I think fundraising felt right for me, especially in this context of the arts, like I said, because I think that it felt right because what I had spent so much time like studying and working with nonprofits and like talking to social enterprises about was how, as socially oriented businesses and organizations, they were able to sustain themselves, especially in like in that unique space that nonprofits occupy in our society. And so I think that what that gave me was a perspective that I think has been very helpful in fundraising and in development work. So I think that being able to kind of combine all of those like outlooks and perspectives and skills ended up like I hadn't necessarily thought specifically like, oh, like I really should get into fundraising and development, but I think that it ended up working out in like needing the things that I felt like I was honing through all of these experiences.
Yeah, that's the same experience for me where when we started CauseVox 12, 13 years ago, is really thinking about, what is the number one issue that a lot of nonprofits have? Like what's preventing them, what's blocking them from actually creating impact and being sustainable? And for us, it's really about fundraising. How do you solve this fundraising problem? And I think as kind of business-minded folks or business experienced folks, we have this thought of how do you be sustainable? How do you make revenue? Like, how do you make more money? Essentially, how do you fundraise? And I think it's interesting where we both gravitated towards solving that unique problem that nonprofits have. So, speaking of fundraising, then I'm curious, since you have this really interesting perspective, VisArts in a general, using CauseVox for 6 years, raised $100,000 last year alone, and more in previous years added up. And then you have kind of like this social anthropology, neuroscience, businessy background. I'm curious with this one question, what is your number one fundraising tip that you have for other nonprofits?
Yeah, so something that we really like to do at VisArts, and I will say the development director, Sharon, also has a background in anthropology. So I think this really informs the way we approach fundraising, is that we really like letting our community and our fundraisers tell their stories. And I think that is the main way. I think that is our number one fundraising hack, because we want to let the community members, like VisArts is a really strong community of a lot of different individuals of different backgrounds and different like ways of approaching the visual arts. And so we really want everyone to share their unique experiences with VisArts, because I think our approach to development is really letting the impact shine through these stories and really trying to like bring let VisArts' impact be highlighted by the people who find the most joy and transformation through our services.
Yeah. I think having that focused impact, or that focus on the impact that your programs create, and then letting the people who experience that tell their own authentic stories really cuts through the noise, in a sense of what's posted on social, or kind of the noise of kind of crafting a fundraising appeal even. So it sounds like the number one fundraising tip that you all have is just letting your community tell other people about the impact that VisArts has had.
Yeah.
Now,
and I think, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just curious. So in terms of like how it's done, then what do y'all do? Do y'all have like a story bank that you collect, or do you all as development folks kind of canvas and talk to a lot of the community? How do you actually source these stories?
So we do a little bit of both. So throughout the year, we encourage VisArts staff and community members to share stories that they hear. If individuals feel like they've had a particularly unique experience at VisArts, we like to kind of keep that rolling throughout the year. So we do have like a quote bank that we add to throughout the year, but then especially for the campaign, I did do a lot of like story collecting. So I spoke to a lot of members of our community across multiple programs and departments to kind of get at the diversity of experiences that people have had across VisArts programs. And so that was a really wonderful way for me to get to know the community, but also for us to be able to share those stories as part of our campaign.
Got it. Got it. So it sounds like as staff members, there's a culture of kind of sourcing stories and keeping your eyes and ears out for them, so that some of the more visible stories or the more memorable stories are then bubbled up and repurposed for some of the fundraising. Got it. I think that's a very unique approach where not only is this a fundraising tip and a hack, but it's actually instilled in the culture of the organization. So I think that's really amazing. So you have all these storytelling scouts out there kind of looking at that. Now, when it comes to using this for fundraising, do you all hone in on just a few specific or a few handful of stories so you can have something more thematic in terms of your storytelling? Or how do you really approach this, and how to do these great stories bubble into the fundraising side?
So in previous years, we had focused on a few stories and going really in depth with telling the story of different individuals. And this year, we wanted to focus on the community aspect of VisArts. And so we actually tried to collect more stories and then organize them in terms of the different programs and sub-communities that are in VisArts. So, for example, we talked to the ceramics community, which is very tightly knit at VisArts. And so we got a number of stories. And I think what that did, approaching it in this way, was help us understand and be able to share how different people experience VisArts within one community and how that community ties in with each other. Mm-hmm. And I think what it did was it allowed us to, one, tell more stories. And I think that was really wonderful, but it also allowed us to really highlight how our community members interact with each other and their relationships with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like in terms of going deep on a handful of stories, which is a previous approach, the more recent approach is to go really broad, but also just to segment out the stories so that it's specific to different programs. I think that's very interesting, because then what you can do is you can have just a collection of stories tied to specific programs. And then those stories can be shared to the specific donors, supporters that are very interested in those programs. So essentially, you're creating stories that are segmented, that resonate more with specific programs and specific donors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, love it. I think that's storytelling. It's a great fundraising hack. Now, in terms of what else you do, so it sounds like you use CauseVox a lot for your fundraising. So I'm curious, could you share with our audience how you use CauseVox, maybe a few examples, so we can kind of dive a little deeper into some best practices?
Yeah. Should I just go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So one of the main ways that we use CauseVox is for our annual campaign, as we have been talking about. And so what we use is we use the peer-to-peer functionality. So this is our campaign site. And first off, we love how much you can customize the page. And we were able to get all the colors to match with our logo, which we loved. And so we use CauseVox, like we like to have an explanation of what the annual campaign is and to give some context as to how we were approaching it. And so this year we approached it again with a lot of community-oriented storytelling, but also in a lot of gratitude, because we know that this year and the past few years have been difficult for many, and we wanted to make sure that we were also showing our gratitude for our community for making VisArts what it is. And so we also loved the little sidebar, because we were able to share more quotes from our community members. We have all of our fundraisers and all of their pages are active. And so I can actually show you our executive directors page. So what we provide is we usually provide an appeal that matches the tone of our campaign. And then fundraisers will go in and add their specific stories or their or share more information about their relationship with VisArts, which we find very valuable.
Mhm.
And
So for this campaign, so it sounds like you're using the CauseVox campaign site, and you're able to design it very easily, make it look like your brand, and also have it sit on your own URL, your own website URL, so it doesn't say CauseVox. So it's very branded to VisArts. So I love that. And then as a core component of this, you're using the peer-to-peer ability as well. So why use the peer-to-peer ability versus just having like a donate page? What kind of benefit and value have you all seen from using your supporters to fundraise?
so I think that it goes very, very well into what we've been talking about with community. And we know that a lot of individuals have found transformation at VisArts. And we wanted to be able to provide the opportunity for those individuals to tell their stories and share their stories with their networks and their families and their friends. And we found that to be particularly helpful for our annual campaign, because if we were to just do a donate page, those kinds of relationships that are foundational to VisArts don't get utilized. And so we really wanted to make this be a community-oriented campaign. And I think that the peer-to-peer functionality makes it very easy, like I said, for all of our fundraisers to be able to share their unique stories and experiences with VisArts and why they think VisArts is important. And I think being able to make that personal appeal allows our campaign to reach more individuals and to garner more support and awareness about our organization and what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like you've seen a lot of success in terms of bridging the storytelling culture of VisArts into fundraising through the peer-to-peer ability, because then you're activating community. These folks can have these personal pages. I think you call them VisArts ambassadors, I believe, and they're able to tell their stories, share it with their networks. I have a question on this. Rough swag. So just about what is the percentage of peer-to-peer donations you get on this campaign versus just direct donations? Do you have like just a rough idea?
I don't have a number that I could give you easily, but I think that is a really interesting metric that we should start collecting.
Yeah, it's curious because for other organizations and other users on CauseVox, at least, they tend to get around 50% or more. Like the vast majority of donations come in from peer-to-peer. So I think it'd be really interesting to tie your storytelling approach directly to kind of the financial results. And that would be an interesting exercise to do. Now, the other question I have related to your peer-to-peer side. So it sounds like staff members at VisArts also can do a peer-to-peer fundraising page as well. And I think that sometimes organizations that we talk to, if it's not built into the culture of an organization, it's hard to ask staff members to go out there and solicit for funds through peer-to-peer fundraising. So how do you all do it at VisArts? Like, is it just part of the culture? Is it mandatory? Is it voluntary? How do folks do it?
It is not mandatory. It is voluntary. And I think that it does fit into the culture of VisArts. I think that a lot of our staff members have extremely personal stories about VisArts and their relationship to the organization. And I think that many of them want to share that with their networks and their families and friends. So it's entirely voluntary, but we always really appreciate when staff also get involved.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to share my screen real fast because I want to kind of take folks through a few different things here. So yeah, this is the peer-to-peer side on your transformations fund. And I love it how you all call it the VisArts ambassadors, since a lot of times when people run peer-to-peer campaigns, it becomes about talking to them about, or they're labeled as participants. But then this over here actually ties your community into a specific role, which I think is really fantastic. And just to answer the question that I asked in terms of percentage of donations, you all raise around $100,000, and just rough swag over here of when I add up mentally, like how much has been raised over here, is definitely more than 50%. So it's amazing to see how you have just visible results from doing this peer-to-peer fundraising as your annual fund, and it's driving rough swag. I'm doing just this this really bad math, it's over 50%. So it's generating really similar results to other peer-to-peer campaigns on CauseVox. So in terms of this, I think you touched on this too on a personal page. So this is your executive director. I think you mentioned something about having a template and then folks can customize it. So what do you all do in terms of putting in the default appeal over here? What are some of the tips that you have for other users in terms of best practices when it comes to pre-populating these personal pages?
I think that it's important to come up with a general theme for a campaign. I think that's something that was really helpful for us, was starting off our campaign, trying to understand how we were thematically going to approach it. And I think that's really important because we want our appeals to be unique. We want them to mean something to our community. And so taking that approach was really helpful when crafting these appeals that individuals could base theirs off of. We try to contextualize it to the times because we want it to be relevant to when people read it. Like we don't want it to be tone deaf. We want it to be cognizant and aware of what's happening in the world. But we try to take those themes and that context and tie it together with our core mission. And so that's something that we reiterate throughout our campaign, because that is what is driving this campaign. It's our mission to transform individuals and communities through the visual arts. But one thing that we also try to do is try to explain how these contributions and how this support from our community will benefit the organization. And I think that giving that kind of transparency in our appeal is very important, so that when individuals are thinking about donating, they can see where these funds are going to go. So we like to share some of these bullet points about what supporting VisArts enables us to do.
Yeah, I love the approach where you're tying the donor impact, what a donor dollar and their intention to support you directly to some type of impact. And we've seen through other organizations on our platform, as well as just through some of these interviews, that that is a fundraising technique that never fails. When you're able to tie donor a dollar to donor impact and tie those two things together as tightly as possible, then it gives the donor a really strong, compelling reason to make a donation. So also just seeing this too, it seems like you all spend a lot of time and a lot of thought in terms of crafting the content in these stories. So if you were to do a rough swag, when setting a pre-campaign and then like doing a fundraising, how much time percentage-wise do you all spend on thinking through stories and crafting these stories?
It was a very time-intensive process. I would say probably about half the time.
Yeah. So I find that really insightful. If over like 50% of your time doing fundraising is on storytelling. And I think that just shows how important it is to focus on stories and crafting those stories, crafting those messages. Well, a lot of times organizations, they allocate their time really differently. For example, like for this campaign, a lot of organizations think, hey, if I do some type of digital fundraising, I need to have a video. So they spend all of their time creating like this perfect video. But then what's lost is that there's other ways to tell stories. It's not just through video. And I find it very interesting for you all that you spend a crazy amount of time, which is very important, to making sure that you're having this cohesive storytelling experience, that you're telling these stories, having these quotes, having these personal appeals that are created in order to empower folks to be successful, as well as to make sure that your donors convert on this page. So I really love that about your campaign. Now, Aishwariya, I think you also have a different example too, which is this the donation page on your website?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look. I'll just continue sharing here.
Okay. Yep. So this is our donate page on our main VisArts website. And so we also use CauseVox on this page. If you scroll just a little further down, yep. So this is our embedded donation form that we use. And so we have been able to customize the donation form and make sure that it fits into our campaigns. And we find this to be really, really helpful. And donors can choose to make a single donation or they can select a recurring donation. And so we have, yeah, I think that the donation form is very intuitive, and I think it makes it very easy for donors to support VisArts.
Yeah, and you're using our new donation form as well, based on kind of how it looks. So
Mhm.
I think that's very interesting because then you're using our latest tech, which allows people to easily make a donation through this process. But then this is tied directly to the Transformations Fund. It's not just a general donate button. So why that approach, kind of just general website donations, versus tying this directly into your campaign site?
So we made that choice during the annual campaign to have the donate page go, like all the donations that come in via that page, to go towards the Transformations Fund, because we wanted to be mindful of the fact that people might find out about our annual campaign through emails, through just being on the website. They could find out about it from social media. And so they might not necessarily go to our dedicated annual campaign page. They might come here. And we wanted to make sure that individuals who come directly to the donate page would also be part of our campaign efforts.
Mhm.
So we wanted to make that available, knowing that people don't always come to our annual campaign because of the peer-to-peer function.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I think the approach is to be inclusive, so that you're putting all your fundraising efforts into one thing versus having it spread apart. So I really love that. And I think what's interesting is that with this Transformations Fund, you have different ways and different types that people can donate. So it's not just a one-time donation, but then folks can make a monthly recurring donation. And I did notice too, yeah, different tiers too. So the one-time gifts over here have specific donation amounts, $15 all the way up to 500, and then people can enter in their own. And the monthly recurring has $10 all the way up to 200. So I'm curious, how did y'all kind of come up with some of these donation tiers, or are these just kind of general options that you want people to choose from?
I think that they were more general options that we wanted to make available. We wanted to provide a range of donation amounts. And I think that, yeah, I think that we just wanted to make sure that people felt comfortable donating $10 or $15 if that's what they felt they were able to do, but then also kind of provide a range of options.
Yeah, especially for your audience where you all are very active in the community and you have a very diverse individual donor base. I think providing a lot of different donation tiers and being mindful of different demographics, the age groups, et cetera, is very important. And then having these tiers here and giving folks options is beneficial so that you can be more inclusive in your donor base. So I really love that. So someone can go through into the donation process, and then they can easily just put in their name, you're collecting phone numbers as well, and they can make a payment through credit card as well as through mobile wallets. So it sounds very easy in terms of this over here.
Yeah.
So I love it. So I think that's very cool. And one of the things that you may want to consider doing, and this is a new feature on CauseVox, is we do have a Pledge Now donation option. So what folks can do is that they can enter in like a pledge, let's say $1,000 that they want to donate, and they can donate over time. So they can select different amounts that's paid over, for example, 12 months, or it can be yearly across 2 years, all the way up to 5 years. And there's different customization options. So it could be interesting where this could be an additional option for folks to make a donation, and then they can spread it over time. Especially, I think this is really valuable, especially for your community where you have such a vibrant base. And instead of having to run different fundraising initiatives all the time, you can just run the pledge initiative, and then folks can just commit to a specific time and then pay that donation over time, which can help increase the gift size and frequency for your individual giving.
Yeah, that's super cool. We'll have to check it out.
Yeah. So I think you're using CauseVox really interesting. You're running these different campaigns. I also saw that you have one from last year or 2 years ago, actually. So can you talk to us about the Vibrancy Fund? What was that? Is it different than the Transformation Fund?
So the Vibrancy Fund was before my time at VisArts, but I think that it was organized in a very similar way. And I will say that our Transformations Fund, our most recent annual campaign, was based on the Vibrancy Fund and how we've done it in the past. So if you look I know you mentioned videos. We did do a video at that point, and that was really wonderful. But if the rest of it is actually very similar, so we have that same kind of pitch and that general description of the campaign that shares a little bit about VisArts and what we're trying to accomplish with this campaign. Again, we shared what funds would support. Yep. So in the little sidebar, and we had the same peer-to-peer functionality where we encouraged our staff and board, and I think it was mostly staff and board to fundraise for us. We had a few team. I think that Visibility had a team. Yep, Team Visibility. And so Visibility Art Lab is our supported studio for neurodiverse and adult artists with intellectual or physical disabilities. And so they decided to create a team. And so they did some fundraising together. And I think that for the most part, the Vibrancy Fund was really the basis upon which we did the Transformations Fund. We followed a lot of the same practices that we found worked then. And we made a few adaptations, but yeah.
Yeah, I really love that where you're using the same playbook for your fundraising, and then you're making improvements and tweaking certain things year after year to see how it generates results. So I really love that. Now I'm curious, Aishwariya, what is your number one fundraising pet peeve? And just shifting gears a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a pet peeve. I think it's just something I try to keep in mind, which is, I think that often in fundraising, there's a lot of focus on the very specific, technical best practices that should be followed. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. But I also know that if there was a checklist of things that every organization could do, we would never have problems meeting our fundraising budgets. But I think that there's another side to it, which has a lot to do with what we've been talking about today, which is really telling this, being able to communicate what your organization does in your community. And I think all nonprofits have vivid, vibrant stories of why they do what they do and what their impact is in the community. And I think that that's a really important part of fundraising that needs to be taken side by side with more of the technical best practices and finding specific techniques that work for general fundraising. I think it's really important to keep in mind that every nonprofit is different and everyone has a different base of donors. They have different community members. They have different ways of speaking about what they do in their community. And I think making sure that that gets highlighted alongside following best practices is really important. So I think those two have to go hand in hand.
Yeah. Well, what's the science behind having story first?
I don't know. I don't know the science behind it, but I think that when we are trying to communicate with people that we might not have had interaction with before, I think storytelling is just a wonderful way to engage individuals. I think it's something that holds us together in our society. And I think that especially when we're talking about organizations that have that are so mission driven, I think that stories become a really wonderful way of being able to share that with others and to create that kind of community that is important when we think about fundraising and development.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what we do know is that through neuroscience, stories allow folks to tap into the emotional side of the
Yeah.
appeal, which generates action. So versus just following a checklist of best practices, which becomes sometimes a little bit rote and a little bit transactional. Uh,
Mhm.
as in, okay, my appeal is 120 characters and I have 5 bullet points. It's just checking the box. So I think what's really important here is what I'm hearing is that focus on stories, focus on the people, focus on the emotion aspect of it, the emotional aspect of it, and then make sure that you step into the shoes of your donors so that they have something that would be interesting for them and compelling for them to take action. So I really love that approach that you're mentioning. So this is really interesting. Now, in terms of CauseVox, I know you mentioned before that you all use CauseVox for a lot of different things. I'm curious, what are some of the results, or what has been your experience so far just using the platform overall?
Um, I love CauseVox. I think that it makes our fundraising efforts really, really like easy and intuitive to approach. There's a lot of ability to customize, which I think is really important. But there's also, it has all the right components needed for us to take on a campaign or to be able to kind of make our campaign fit our organization. And I think that that has been really wonderful. I also think that we've like there's so many different users of CauseVox, like all of our fundraisers and all of our admin. And I think that it has been very easy to share instructions and to be able to invest like the time and energy to train individuals on it, which I think has made it very successful. So we create like tip sheets, and we use the tip sheets that CauseVox provides to be able to share with like our staff and board as to how to reactivate their pages, because we clone our campaigns, which is another really useful and helpful bit about CauseVox, is that we clone them so that individuals don't have to go back and remake their pages every year. They can just go back and reactivate them and then make the adjustments that they need to make to their appeals. And I think that it's been really helpful to have this platform, because we have been able to have a campaign process that's become a very well-oiled machine, because our fundraisers know what to look forward to. They know how to change their campaign pages. And I think that it's been really useful for tracking donations and being able to monitor the progress of our campaigns and be able to compare them across years.
Yeah.
So I think in a lot of many ways CauseVox has been really valuable to
Yeah, well,
VisArts.
that's great to hear. I mean, it's great to hear how it saved a lot of time where you're able to just clone campaigns, clone pages, and have all the personal pages carry over as well. So that provides a easier experience for your ambassadors to go in there and create those pages, as well as it's an easier experience for all the admins too. So you can spend less time setting things up. And then you can actually then use that to compare year after year on the reporting side to see how things are going, to see how things have changed. So I really love how we've been able to benefit VisArts in a small way in order to help accelerate your fundraising. So that's really great to hear. I think one thing that's really interesting too is that every year is very different too. So then you get to really see how things can be changed. And then now it's pretty fundamental in the culture of the fundraising, where not only your ambassadors, but also the staff members over there at VisArts are familiar with the platform. So it becomes easier and easier as time goes on. So I really love that too. Yeah. Now, in terms of how people can support VisArts and how they can learn more information about y'all, where can people go?
So you can go to our website, visartscenter.org, and you can also check out our annual campaign site. Visartscenter.org. And that has tons and tons of information about VisArts as an organization and some of our offerings. So you can check those out. Some offerings are now virtual, so you can potentially get involved even if you don't live in Maryland.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so definitely check out visartscenter.org. We'll include a link in the description area of the video. Check them out. They're doing some amazing stuff, and we love. I'm on the marketing list at your newsletter, so I get a ton of emails all the time, which I think is great because your emails are really informative, but also really well written. So I really love that. But Aishwariya, thanks so much for the time today. I think the fundraising tips on storytelling about tying impact to dollars, as well as how do you activate these peer-to-peer pages, I think has been really valuable. So I really love what y'all are doing over there at VisArts, and hope to see more fundraising success from y'all very soon.
Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.